Okay, I have 1:30 right on the dot, and we'll start the meeting. First up, roll call. Go ahead and just announce who's here, just for the record.
Forgive me.
Hi, Craig. Where's Craig?
Mr. Steele,
Yeah, I'm here.
Mr. Peterson,
I'm here.
Mr. Michaelis,
I'm here.
Ms. Campbell. I mean, Ms. Whitmore, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, yes, here.
Ms. Edwards. Ms. Heil
Oh,
or Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have all voting members or their alternates here.
Yes.
Public involvement announcement, would you just go ahead and let
Yes.
folks know?
This is a public meeting, and the public is invited to participate, but there is a process. The staff usually gives a presentation, and then the committee will discuss it, and then the chair will open up for comments to the public.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any changes to the agenda? Anybody?
Yes, sir. We have some
Okay.
changes. We'd like to move item 5A down to item 6D, other informational items. No, correction, to 6B, AMATS project updates. And we're going to add a presentation under 6D by the Health and Human Services Air Quality staff.
Under 6B?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Under 6D,
D.
Health and Human Services. It's the air quality advertising campaign.
Okay. Any other changes?
No, sir.
Additions, deletions?
Move to approve.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Anybody disagree with that? All right, seeing no disagreement, it's approved. Okay, first item of business, approval of the minutes of the August 28th, 2014 meeting. Everybody have a chance to look at them? When you're ready, I'll accept the motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Awesome.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any changes, deletions, additions to the minutes for 28 August? Okay, seeing none, then I'll assume it's approved. Next up is the September 25th, 2014 minutes of the meeting. Any additions, deletions, or changes?
Move to approve.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And seconded. Anybody have any disagreement with the minutes as presented? Okay, seeing none, those are approved. Okay, under business items, we will be taking up the 2014 MTP update.
Yes, sir. We've been asked to have a standing business item for this item. There's no business item today, just an information to tell you that we do have an RFP that's over at the State Department of Transportation now, and we'll hope to get a consultant on board by March 1st.
Okay, anybody have any questions regarding that? Okay, seeing none. Okay, other business, any? Under this category? Seeing none. Informational reports. First one up is public transportation status report.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Christine Sunday. I'm the planning manager for the Public Transportation Department, and I'll be filling in for Lance Wilbur. Okay. Great. So I'm here today to provide you with an update of the transit world, what's going on, some of our successes and challenges that we've faced over the last year and also in the future. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are, just to remind you of all of the services we offer. We provide the fixed route bus service for the Anchorage and Eagle River Chudiak areas. We also offer then the complimentary paratransit services for persons with disabilities and senior transportation. And then we also provide van pool vehicles and matching services for the region. We offer about, we've offered about 3 million trips on our fixed route bus service year to date for 2014. Our service for fixed route covers 91% of the population in the urbanized area within a quarter mile of a bus route. So we do have a lot of service coverage in the area. As far as our anchorized services, year to date, we've offered about 125,000 trips, and for van pool, about 185,000 trips. So that's a lot of single occupancy vehicles off the road. Okay, so some of our 2014 achievements. July 1st of this year, People Mover turned 40. Back in 1974, bus service started. We had 15 buses in operation and 8 bus routes. Our fare for an adult was 25 cents. And we offered 187,000 trips that year. So we've grown a lot by 2014. Currently, we have 14 routes, 54 buses in operation. And again, we average about 4 million trips per year. Another achievement was the launch of our trip planner on our peoplemover.org website. This was done by integrating our transit data into the common transit data feed and integrating then our data into Google Maps. So you're able to better plan a trip using our website, and then you can also use the Google Maps website or the Google Maps app. And so again, this really improved planning your trip for the public. And then it also actually helped our customer service staff a lot because they're able then to plan trips for the public and then also make it a little bit more visually appealing to the public to show them how to get where they need to go.
Question, if you don't mind? Thank you. As you were talking about apps, and so does a municipality of Anchorage, People Mover, have an app that people can download to their smartphones to, figure out if the bus is on time or what route they need to take or anything like that? Or?
Right, so right now, the department does not have an app that we've sponsored or created. You can use the Google Maps app to plan a trip, but it doesn't currently have sort of, real-time schedule information. It's all scheduled data. We do have a bus tracker. It's not an app, it's just on our website, but you can use that to get current times for bus service. And then the plan is actually to open our data, now that we've had it integrated into the GTFS feed, which is the common transit feed, to make that available to the public so that other app developers and people in the public can actually create their own apps using our data. That's sort of the model that a lot of other agencies across the nation have done, because we don't necessarily have the resources on staff to be creating these apps. So we might as well be, using the public that has that knowledge and those skills to create a really good app that people can use.
Okay, well, yeah, because I just think that with the overall availability of smartphone technology increasing daily, I think we could maybe increase our ridership if people that are really into having their smartphones with them 24/7 and really know how to use them. I think that's something that, and we've heard that the millennial generation likes public transportation and maybe owns automobiles and drives less. And so maybe they might be an area of people we can market the People Mover to increase ridership.
Exactly. I think that's definitely our goal, and nobody likes to be at a bus stop and not know when the next bus is coming. So the goal is to get that.
Especially in wintertime.
Exactly. So the goal is definitely to get to that real-time data easily available as well. So, yep. Great. Yeah. Some of our other.
Mr. Steele has a follow-up.
Yeah,
Okay.
we got to keep up with Uber too. They're knocking on our doors, and yeah, it's the way to go. I hope you're successful in having somebody step up and create some help.
But my understanding, if I may, my understanding is though, that if I'm waiting for a particular bus at a bus stop, I can go ahead and just use my phone and I can get on there and see how late that bus is or if it's on time. Is that correct?
Yes, using our bus tracker. That's available.
And how do we find that bus tracker?
It's bustracker.muni.org, and it's available on peoplemover.org.
Okay.
So the goal, though, is to get that information in the app, because it seems that that's what people,
Yes.
it's an easier format than using a browser to get the information, and it's definitely something we're working on.
And as we do construction projects and change the routes quickly, if you have a diversion for a short period of time, that'll be on there too, I'm sure.
it is hopefully in the future something that would be available. Yes, it's not currently. Mhm.
Now we've got somebody on the other
Sorry,
side.
I was just gonna chime in real quick. There are two private apps on the market right now for Anchorage Public Transportation that weren't created by the department. They're available on iTunes and Android, and it takes the information from Bus Tracker. Somebody built their own app, and so those are paid for apps in iTunes and Google Play right now. And then also AMATS, we are working on an app that would be tying all of the modes together. We received a public transportation when I was there. We received a grant about 2-3 years ago now, and so we're working on getting that project kicked off.
So people mover could subscribe to these apps when they come up, and then make them available to the
Absolutely,
general public.
yeah. But it would be important that people understand that the data is not maintained by People Mover, so the integrity of the app is kind of used at your own risk,
Yeah.
basically. So
Excuse me, so you've been developing this for the last 2 or 3 years?
So we received a grant from FTA and the Department of Defense to develop an app for smartphones, tablets, and then also a web-based trip planner that was multimodal. So walking, biking, transit, car sharing, van pooling, all kind of a one-stop shop piece. So we have about $150,000 allocated right now. I'm in the process right now of writing the sole source procurement for that and going to start taking that on. So,
So
sorry.
when do you think that might be available for public consumption?
Well, if I could get a sole source procurement sooner than later, but if we have to go out for a competitive process, I would anticipate probably a year and a half. So,
Okay.
sorry to hijack Christine.
But even if you went out sole source, you'd still have a long lead time because somebody would have to develop the app.
So it already exists.
Oh, it does?
It's a third-party hosted system that already exists and is being implemented in Denver, in different areas of California, Utah, places that. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. So it's already there. Their project base right now would allow them to pick up this project and move swiftly.
Don't we have the GPS portion of it at some of our bus stops now,
Well,
where we can say
well, the
where the
buses-
buses are,
The buses are
how late they
GPS.
are.
Yeah.
The buses are
All
GPS.
of our buses have automatic vehicle locators on them, so we're able to know where the bus is.
But it seems to me like out in front of the museum and stuff, isn't there an actual time or, display that basically says next bus is coming X time or whatever? That's
Yes.
tied into the GPS system.
Yep, and eventually we'd like to have more of those signs at more locations that have
Yeah.
high transfers occurring. But they do use then the ABL system on the buses to estimate when those buses will
And
be
I presume they
arriving.
have that at Diamond as well. or
They have it
some-
at Diamond and Muldoon and the museum and then downtown.
Okay,
Mhm. Yeah, and
we're
again,
getting there slowly.
yeah, well, the first step for an app like Jamie's was to get our transit data in a place that it's usable in these types of apps. And now that we've done that, we can move forward with creating something a little more dynamic and usable for the public.
Good.
Mhm.
So one final question on that is, what could we do as the AMATS committee to speed up your process?
Well, the sole source procurement, I'm going to be meeting with purchasing either tomorrow or early next week. And then my next piece will be the IT steering committee. So since this is a third-party hosted, web-based hosted trip planner and app, we really have a precedent already set with other departments that are using third-party hosted apps and software. So DHHS has third-party. AMATS will have their tip tool, which is going to be hosted third-party. So there's a precedent set. We're not reinventing the wheel here or creating something brand new. So
So the bottom line is if you go sole source, you've cut down the regular procurement process by about 3 months if you go sole source. But still, there's other hurdles that, she's going to have to go through even if you go sole source. So.
And updating everything and all that stuff, the process.
It's a commitment to maintain the data, and I'm not working intimately with Jamie's project, but they're then are a lot of different departments and agencies that are going to have to get their data in a place where it would be usable in an app like this. So transit isn't a good place to do that, but the great thing about an app like what Jamie's talking about though is you're able then to plan trips between modes, which is something that's pretty amazing. You can take the bus and you can walk and you can bike on trails or whatever the case is. So,
Catch a shuttle train back to the valley.
exactly. Yep. All right, so other 2014 achievements. We are in the process of doing an onboard origin destination passenger survey. It's in complement to the regional household travel survey that I'm sure you've heard a lot about. Basically, we had contractors go out onto our buses and survey our passengers to get their trip information, where they're coming from, where they're going to, how many transfers did they make, how far did they walk to their destination, different information like that. They surveyed at the end of September, so they're right now compiling, waiting, analyzing those results, and we expect them in early December to get the results of that survey, which will be timely then for us to use that information for our service planning for our 2015 service change. Because it's good to know what your passengers are doing when you're planning the service for them. The other big project is our IVR project, another technology project. It is our interactive voice response system. So basically our ride line that everyone calls, the number that's on our buses, it's a customer service line that's automated and it can give schedule information by time point. This new one is a little bit more advanced. It offers speech recognition, and then it also offers the ability to search for the real-time passing times at the bus stop level. So it's a much finer level of detail that somebody is able to get using the IVR. And the use of these bus stop numbers is actually something new. So, they've always been posted the unique bus stop ID number at our bus stops, but now we need to sort of educate the public to pay attention to those numbers so that they're better able to use this system. But again, this is a great dynamic system and it cuts down on our need for customer service personnel because a lot of people are able to get their information using this system. The other 2014 achievement is our East High School pilot program. This was a UPass program that we went into with the school district. So it's similar to our UAA UPass agreement where UAA students are able to just use their Wolf card and basically ride the bus for free. The fare is sort of wrapped into their student fees. This is something similar, but for East High faculty and students. It's the first time we've done this. It started this school year. So far it's been wildly popular, not just to get to and from school, but to a lot of after-school activities. So if this is successful, which it appears that it will be, it's something that we'd look to expand in the future to other schools. And we selected East because it had probably the best bus access.
Are you able to track numbers of trip numbers, how many trips they're taking, so you can see if it's increasing or decreasing?
Yes, being able to measure the success of the program is really important. So we were actually able to use the smart card technology on their school IDs. So the same thing they use when they go to school is what they can use on the bus. And they tap it and we track it.
Beautiful.
And they can use that in the weekends and other activities. Is there any indication that maybe they're losing their cards and trading their cards with West and other people around?
We're not just tracking where they're used. Every card has a smart card ID number that's associated with a student. And so they need to report it if it's lost and we can turn it off. Yes. Yep. Okay. 2014 achievements continued, on-time performance. We're always looking to improve the reliability of our service, which is obviously very important to our customers. You can see from this chart that we've improved drastically over the last couple of years, and that's primarily due to our better technology. With the AVL system and other things I've talked about on our buses, we're better able to track the true travel times of our buses, which means that we're better able to refine our schedules based on the conditions on the ground, which means more reliable service. Our target is 85%, that's our goal, and you can see we're getting closer and closer to that. So we're pretty proud of that. Equipment, fleet, facility upgrades, that's always a challenge. Public transportation is pretty capital heavy. We've been able to be creative and aggressive really to pursue alternative funding sources for some of these needs. We've successfully applied for a number of discretionary grants, so we were able to replace the roof on some of our facilities, purchase buses, upgrade some of the heating fixtures in our bus barn. We also are in the process of transferring vans to supplement some of our van pool fleet from Fairbanks. So again, another creative way to build our capital needs for our van pool fleet. And then we recently purchased 12 MV1s, which are the vehicle you see on the screen. I don't know, I think there was a news story maybe last night about it. I didn't see it, but this is the first time we've purchased a vehicle like this, and it's an attempt to have a smaller capacity, fully accessible vehicle that gets much better gas mileage. And so we're going to see then how well these work for us.
Are they, and so what user group are we targeting those for?
So these are for our Anchor Rides paratransit service. So they need to be fully accessible for persons with disabilities, but they also transport seniors and others that are not are able to use our fixed route service.
Are they all on the street now?
I'm not sure if 100% are, but I know that they're in use. Yeah, we've definitely heard when people see them on the street.
Yeah.
They're very distinctive. Okay. And so with all of this, I guess this slide sort of just summarizes all the things that I've talked about. Proven perspective, I think Lance's intent with this comment was that, we've had a lot of turnover on our staff the last few years, a lot of really valuable staff members that have been with public transit for 30 plus years. So we've lost a lot of knowledge, but with that, we have some sort of fresh faces, fresh ideas, and trying different solutions for some old problems. So that's sort of a benefit and a challenge at the same time. Drivers, we have great drivers. We need to just continue trying to keep fully staffed, keep them well trained, because it's not just about driving a bus. It's really a customer service position. So they're the face of transit, very important. Keeping our facilities up to date, maintaining our budgeting efficiently. Safety is very important for transit. Back in June, the TSA came and did a baseline review for our facilities. So they're really looking at the security of our capital fleet and our facilities. We have not received that report yet, but we're really looking forward to it. It will provide some recommendations that we can do to improve the security of our facilities, especially those low-hanging fruit things that we can maybe easily achieve in a shorter time frame. We're really looking forward to that report. And then lastly, partners and relationships. I think every time I talk about it, I talk about how just how much we're able to leverage our resources by partnering with PM&E and the state TOT to, for our bus stop improvements to occur simultaneously with road construction rather than, transit going in and constantly making these improvements on our own. So we just definitely value all of those relationships and partners in what we do. And the bottom two bubbles, the communication, customer service, all of that, those are sort of our internal strategic things that we keep in mind with everything we do, how important communication, customer service is. So some of the challenges that transit faces, staffing has been an issue for a number of years. Just keeping fully staffed for bus operators, if somebody goes on vacation, if somebody quits, we still have to have so many buses out on the street. And so that means we have to pull in a lot of other folks for overtime just to keep the buses running. So it's just really important that we're able to keep fully staffed. And then mechanics. I've heard that this is just a problem throughout the state, but we have, I think, 4 vacancies and just have a hard time getting good qualified folks that want the position. So again, it's a challenge then for that. Passenger conduct, it's been an issue. You want everyone to make the ride safe and comfortable for everyone, and sometimes there are bad behaviors, and so we struggle with keeping the behaviors appropriate on the bus. We want a good image for public transportation. Ridership and revenues, we implemented a fare increase January 1st, so we did anticipate a slight decline in ridership for the year. That's commonly what will happen. And so our ridership year to date is down about 3 to 4%, which is within a reasonable amount, but it is down. And so we're constantly looking at ways to increase our ridership. and not just our ridership, but also our productivity, so that we're putting our resources in good places so that we're, efficiently using our resources. Technology, I talked about that. Technology is great. It's benefited our service in so many different ways, but it also has a short lifespan. And so right now we have a lot of aging technology that in the next probably 2 to 5 years, we're going to have to start looking strategically at how we're going to upgrade that to stay current with what's out there. So our future, continuously improving our on-time performance.
Brief interruption here,
Oh, sure.
Mr. Peterson.
You were talking about
Last slide.
disruptions, passenger conduct on the bus. Do you have a list of classifications of what's the number one conflict between passengers on the bus or complaint about it? You know?
I don't know that I have the number one complaint necessarily that like customers make, but this is something that our customer service and marketing division is taking on with their marketing grant. They want to do a passenger etiquette campaign next year. And so the stage we're in right now is we're surveying bus operators, and eventually we'll be surveying the public to determine what are those problem behaviors that people see, and then target our campaign to those problems to try to improve them. Because some of these issues are, they might make someone uncomfortable on the bus, so they don't want to ride again. But some of these issues are actually things that impact our on-time performance. So it impacts our ability to get to where we need to go on time. For instance, we encourage everyone to have their fare ready when they board the bus. Because if you don't and you're fumbling around, it slows down the process. So that might be also a behavior that we would target. We just haven't determined what those are yet. It's a campaign to look for in 2015.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Steele.
My question, maybe George can answer, but maybe you can also, is we're getting into winter. Who does the snow clearing and making the stops accessible year round?
That's a good question, and I hope I answer it correctly. I know some of the roads that the Muni maintains or state DOT maintains, they do try to clear.
Yeah.
It's not always maybe as timely, because they have other commitments, as
Sure.
timely as a lot of passengers would like. We do have, I believe, one vehicle capable of clearing stops. I think we're in the process of acquiring a second vehicle that would be able to clear stops. And so they have sort of a list of those places that we know are problematic when we get complaints to actually go out and clear the stops ourselves.
To further amplify, where we have the most amount of problems, and it's not a dig on anybody. It's
Plows
just,
come by.
it's just the way that you plow. On the large roads, the high-speed roads, they use high-speed plows, and rightly so. And when they do that, of course, the snow is really thrown right into the area. On the smaller roads, of course, street maintenance is able to do a pretty good job as they're doing the sidewalks, cleaning out the bus stops. But remember, those are all on schedule, so they're not immediate. They're done as they get to them, based on the schedule that they're using. Also, from time to time, depending on how bad the situation is, we have been known to get temporary folks out there to clean some of them as well. So,
Yeah, if we're trying to improve ridership, that may be an issue.
Yeah.
Access to the stuff.
Transportation has a staff of, I want to say, 4 or 5. I forget what we call them, but they're basically our maintenance folks that go out and maintain our bus stops. But we have 1,100 bus stops. So it's a big job for 4 or 5 guys to do. And so as they're able, they're also out there trying to clear off the benches. Sometimes they're out there with ice picks trying to, get those free, but they do their best, but it's a big job.
Well, you got to coordinate with Public Works in terms of, with plowing.
and they do a good job
On
of
the
doing
time.
that. Yeah, the coordination is there. It's, just everything takes time.
Yeah, definitely good coordination. They also help us out a lot to make sure they're salting our routes, first, to make sure that we're still able to provide our service regardless of the weather. So,
And we do the hazardous routes first, as you know, the school routes.
So, where was that? Okay. Our future, as I said, continuously improving our on-time performance. We have annual service changes. It's scheduled for June of next year, but we don't look just at maybe adjusting a route alignment. We're constantly analyzing the running times for our routes and making sure that we adjust our schedules accordingly. And so we'll be doing that here shortly, starting that process. Care for customers, just emphasizing customer service in everything we do. It's not just driving a bus. It's providing a service and providing that customer-oriented outlook. Enhanced service with existing and new resources. This is, again, like I was talking about, productivity, just making sure that we're efficiently using our resources to provide bus service to as many people as we can. And then improved and updated fleet and facilities. We're constantly trying to do this. However, this one's actually a big challenge for us. In about 2019, we're looking at the need to replace about 1/3 of our fixed route fleet, which is a lot of vehicles, a lot of dollars. So we're now having to strategically plan how we may be able to pay for those and purchase those. How we're funded really quick. As you can see, 56% is funded with muni property tax supported operating budget. High percentage, 22% is revenue that were generated. That's from past sales, cash fares on the buses, and then also our advertising. We're actually able to bring in more advertising this year, as I'm sure you can imagine. Expenditures, largest is personnel. We have 90, I think 94 at max, bus operators, maintenance folks, admin staff. Fuel is another high percentage. And then services in purple is large, but it also includes our contracted professional services. So for like our van pool contract and our anchor rides, the contractor that operates our anchor rides vehicles as well. Yep.
Sir?
And you're, speaking of fuel, it made me think you're talking about needing to replace 1/3 of the fleet here in a few years. Have you considered switching to natural gas?
I know that's come up. I know it's been considered. I know there are challenges associated, but my knowledge is at that level, so I can't really speak to it.
I think they're twice the cost, or at least the school district experimented with that, and the buses, the cost of the buses was about twice as much. I think operating was probably in the same ballpark, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, the retrofitting, first of all, if you have to retrofit a bus, it's very, very expensive. If you buy the bus already configured that way, it's still more expensive. And, you know, the trials that was done, at least in the school district during that period of time that you're talking about, found that they weren't as efficient as far as the power that's necessary, so.
And I thought maybe there were unique challenges with winter.
They have
conditions,
challenges
yeah.
with winter because of the,
Heating
heating them, but,
Heating engines.
but what happens with that, it's actually, I can't remember if they use CNG or if it was propane, it was one of the two, but what happens is, when it gets very, very cold, you know what happens to propane. And so it's not anywhere near as efficient as it is when the weather is not freezing, so there were just challenges. And the city, on the city side, when I was here before, we did try, we ran an experiment with them, and then it really didn't work out for us, so those vehicles were actually transferred to the school district. So, the part of some of the fleet that we had, so.
Yeah, and so we're not really necessarily looking at CNG, but we're getting ready to replace our last two 1998 buses. So the next oldest buses are 2008s. So we are already a lot more efficient just by having newer vehicles. And that was it for my presentation. If anyone has any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or try to.
Any further questions, gentlemen? Have you exhausted yourselves?
Yes.
I had a couple of questions. When you talked about your expenses up there, does that include your replacement of fleet expenditures? Is that in there somewhere? Or was that in, did I miss it in the category somewhere?
Well, we haven't replaced any vehicles this year, so this was 2014 expenditures. So we're looking at replacing 2 buses in the next year, but we haven't started that contract.
So would those typically be then, if you go to your previous slide, which I believe was the revenue side of your equation, would that typically come from then a grant, or would that be more in the operating side of the
It
house?
would be a grant.
Yeah, so most of the
Yeah.
federal grants we use for our capital purchases, like replacing our
And do
vehicles.
those
or
come
facilities.
typically through AMATS then, or is that comes from somewhere else?
They do their table 7 in the
Okay.
tip are the transit 5307 money and then any other discretionary grants that we
Well-
receive.
But we are required to match, so we do spend some operating as part of the match.
We do, we 80/20 match, and then we also receive some federal money through the CMAQ program, and we use that also to purchase buses.
And what capacity is the system at right now when you talk about ridership over the overall system? Are you at 10%, 100%, or do you have any idea?
When you say capacity, you mean sort of
When
the
you've got
fullness
50
of our
seats on a bus,
buses?
yeah, how many seats are full on a?
I don't think I
System-wide
could
basis.
speak system-wide, but I can tell you we're currently doing some analysis on that to identify where there's sort of that latent demand for service that we could add maybe frequency or trips to. Mostly we're gonna see full buses are Route 45. It's really the only route in our system. It's about 26% of all of our riders are riding Route 45. It has the demand. It goes from downtown through Mountain View,
Thank you.
and then it goes south to A&MC through the UMed area.
Okay,
So it's about 26% of all of our passengers ride that route, and it's where the demand is so high that we've actually been able to achieve 20-minute frequencies, which is the most frequent in our system. And we do that between 11 and, I want to say 5, 4 or 5.
And then one of the other things that they've done is, we've got some routes that high density, they're only during certain periods of time.
70.
And so what they do there, of course, is they try to maximize the
Right.
number of buses, and then throughout the rest of the day, when it's not in such use, there's a bigger span in
Sure.
between. And then the other thing is, over the years, we've actually cut out an awful lot of the, what we would call less efficient routes, where you only have like 26 riders or so on them, and we've done a pretty good job of doing that, so.
And that work doesn't stop. I mean, as you know, traffic patterns change, development changes, and so we're constantly looking at that.
so my last, maybe my last question. Do you have any variance in your fleet size? I mean, I see the big giant bus that runs through my neighborhood, and it looks like it's quite often got 1 or 2 people in it. Do you have buses that are smaller size for your feeder routes or whatever?
Not anymore. My understanding is we tried 30-foot buses for a while, and they provided, I believe, service on the hillside. I wasn't here for it, but they did that. My understanding is it costs the same to operate those, so it didn't provide necessarily a lot of benefit. And it just is really more parts you have to keep on
Sure.
hand.
Different
and
fleet, get it.
Yep, and different knowledge to service those vehicles, so it didn't really provide much benefit. Where we have maybe a lower demand, but there's still demand, we've looked at providing sort of contracting through our paratransit contractor, MV, to provide more like a shuttle service. And it's something that we could look at doing at other locations in the future, but right now, the best example is that we do an Eagle River to Muldoon shuttle, and it operates at fixed times, so it's just like a fixed route service, but it just has those 2 pickup and drop off locations. And it operates at more times of day than our Route 102, which is our 40-foot bus commuter service that goes from Peters Creek to downtown and then A&MC.
Okay, thanks. Anything else?
One more.
One final
I
question.
love all the
One more.
interest in transit today.
The shuttle that you use for neighborhood health clinic, they have expressed a desire to expand the hours, especially in the morning, I mean, on that end of it, on the morning. And so we'll probably be talking about that at budget time. But,
Right now, don't we, they basically are on contract, right? They contract for that
I
service.
think so.
They contract with MV
Right.
separately, yeah, and then we
That's right.
participate towards the cost.
Yeah, so we're not directly involved in that, other than you
We
have
pay for a part of
graciously,
it.
granted them
Yes.
X number of dollars each year to assist them in this contract.
It's either that way or find a way to service them with 9 and 75, I think, are the 2 routes. And
No,
that's
and
a
it's-
problem on C Street. so.
Yeah, and planning staff has looked at it, and it's a really challenging site to service with a 40-foot bus. It's just very challenging, and To do that with our existing routes would create a lot of delay for the existing passengers on the bus. So we just have to balance that delay that those passengers would experience with the demand that that site would generate. But we've been looking at, I think, that site for the last 5 years, you know,
Yeah.
how we could
I
provide
understand
service.
that,
Mhm.
Christine. Sorry, I was just gonna say the Anchorage Neighborhood Health Center did recently put in a project nomination for some of the Alaska Mental Health Trust funds that I manage through AMATS. And they are looking to apply for additional monies to match the money that's currently in the budget for them. So there's an 80-20 match there. And there's about almost $600,000 worth of mental health trust money available. So they are one of 5 applicants that will be applying for those funds. So to expand our shuttle.
Yeah, they were, anyway, they were concerned.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. So I've got a bunch of scribbles on my agenda here where I'm thinking something got moved around, but.
Right, so item, what shows on yours is A, that
5A.
that goes down to AMATS project update.
Okay, so we're now on to, I guess, item 6B, which would be the AMATS projects updates.
Yes, sir. We have 4 projects right now that are going on concurrently that are precursors to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. And one thing is the household travel survey that's going on as part of the travel demand model update. The survey is really important because it helps us identify current needs where people are traveling, how they're traveling, and that's used as an input to the model, and it helps us with origins and destinations. And I'd like to encourage anybody who would like to participate in the survey. It closes tomorrow, and it's online. You can go to the AMATS webpage, and under current projects, there's a website for the household travel survey. There's a welcome from Mr. Flynn and Mr. Lyon on that page, and you would want to log on today probably to get your information to figure out how you're going to do that and how you record it and submit it.
I did it.
Beg your pardon?
I had a whole day and
Yay!
logged the whole thing through and did 5 different people's trip reports and the whole 9 yards.
Right, yes, and they are including the Matsuburo also in Eagle River. We are a bit overrepresented with respondents from Matsu and Eagle River. So I'd like to encourage people from Anchorage to participate. So the travel demand model update, we do this like once every 10 years plus. It's not something we do all the time. And it's basically fine-tuning the model. It's a computerized model that helps us estimate future travel demand into the future, so we can identify gaps and needs. And we've hired RSG as the contractor for this. And right now they're looking at the traffic analysis zones and socioeconomic projections and assumptions. That's really important that we have that piece correct. In the past, we've used ISER with the University of Alaska. Their work on this will not be done. They're not planning on completing it, so we're working with the subcontractor to get that information. The congestion management process update is another project. And basically, a congestion management process is a systematic and regionally accepted approach to handling congestion. And it's identifying objectives that come from the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and looking at performance measures and strategies to help us with congestion. So that's in a nutshell, but we've also hired a contractor to help us with that. Cambridge Systematics, and our sub on that is Parsons Brinkerhoff. And so that is going to be wrapped up in around June timeframe as well, same time as the model update. And then another project we have is the Intelligent Transportation Systems Architecture update. That is a little different type of plan. It's used for planning, but also for individual project managers for when technology is part of their project. It's to encourage integration of systems and users and to save money, be more efficient. That's in a nutshell. You'll have a presentation on that later. So I guess we should get on to the main event here. This is the operating agreement revisions. You have before you a memo for this item and integrated and a marked up copy of the operating agreement and an addendum, which is actually just a summary of the changes. And then also for your information, we have a draft of the Technical Advisory Committee reviewed bylaws for a proposed Citizens Advisory Committee.
Can I just point out though that the bylaws were just to be as a straw man to give an indication, but we had not completely worked through all the issues of the bylaws.
Right.
Like who's gonna be on the committee, how it's gonna be picked, all that kind of stuff. It was just to show it's the similarity to the other different committees that are currently for AMATS.
Yes.
Because the bylaws are not to be looked at as something to be approved, or these are just a straw man, look-see template. It's not anywhere near ready to be done yet, so.
That's
just
right.
to
So
clarify that.
I missed the start of the meeting, but let me clarify. I assume that since this was moved down into the informational items, that there's no action for this
No,
board
that's
today. And this is just kind of a heads up, here's kind of where the thinking is today. If you guys want to chew on this for a month and, come back with some ideas, we can. Is that kind of the status of where we're
That's
at?
exactly right. When I
Okay,
met with
thank
Mr.
you.
Vacalis yesterday, it was his request that we do that because it was not planned to provide any draft bylaws to you because they were not official yet. The bylaws that are here is exactly what Ms. Heil said. They're just strictly for information. They haven't been finalized by the TAC. What should probably happen is that we bring back to you, the TAC should look at them again and finalize them and send them forward for recommendation to you all.
The main thing was at the last policy committee meeting, Mr. Campbell had mentioned that he would like to have the naming of AMATS come through as a separate item and not as part of the public involvement plan update. And staff went back and looked and found that the name change the last time AMATS changed name was around 2001 and 2002, way before the latest update of the current public involvement plan was updated, and they updated that plan with the new name at that time. And so it appeared that the more appropriate way to address the any kind of potential name change was through an amendment or an addendum of the operating agreement, because that's where our official name is at. And so that's the reason why the operating agreement mainly is coming through, but at the time, there's a lot of issues with using the Planning and Zoning Committee as the Citizen Air Quality Committee because of trying to get on their calendars and delays that are happening in the processes and timelines. In addition, trying to identify or address some of the issues at our last triennial certification review, where the Federal Highway Administration identified there were certain groups that aren't really being representative on in any of our committees as a whole, and that, like the airport, the bases, Eklutna, Eagle River. I mean, these kind of things are may fit better on a citizens advisory committee with additional, like, at-large than the planning and zoning, which have very clear focus on what their tasks are. So that's why that conversation is just beginning to start on trying to deal with the timing issues and dealing with what FHWA had brought up, that maybe now is the time to consider a citizens advisory group that would have maybe a member of the planning and zoning on it, and maybe have some of these other groups on it. And that committee would then deal and be called, and their primary purpose would be provide an overall broad input to the various documents and processes that AMATS has, and truly serve as a citizens advisory committee, where the other committees are very specialized. You have the air quality committee, you have the freight committee, and you have the bike and ped committee. Those are very, very focused, where this would be a broad group of people to look at in a more holistic viewpoint. Sorry, I took your input.
That's fine.
Okay, so I think that gives us, we've got to me, we've got a relatively small issue here with the naming of the committee. I was just kind of taken by surprise that somehow staff had changed the name of AMATS without us even being aware of it. That was kind of a shock to me. But the secondary thing here, I think the advisory committee is a much larger kind of a policy level issue that we need to think about a little bit. And I guess we've all had our own experiences with P&Z, and we may think what we think. But right now, it's kind of a committee that was created for other reasons, and we've kind of tapped into them as part of our process. And I think that there's good reason to consider an independent committee that is more tuned to our needs as a, transportation-based solutions currently agency. And so I guess I would just ask each member here to think about this a little bit and see if you've got, because ultimately it's going to come back to us to approve this concept or not. And I guess that's kind of the reason we're thinking about it here today.
Yes, and when we went through the pre-agenda meeting yesterday, the concern that I had is that there's an awful lot of fleshing out that's, as you mentioned, that really has to be done. And
Right.
rather than spend a whole lot of time at this level, it's best that the technical committee goes and answers all the different questions that are out there as to who the membership really should be, how do they get appointed, how long do they serve, what exactly is their scope of responsibility, and all of that has to be ironed out. And so that's why, I think it was moved that way. So moved down to this as
I don't have any
information.
problem with it. I think it's something that we need to reflect on a little bit. So I think it's good that we've got it for us today as an informational item. And like I said, we've got some things we can think about here for the next month and see where the technical committee wants to go. And if next month the committee feels like we need to have an action item on this and we think the whole idea is crazy, we can certainly respond to that too with a agenda item to disperse and desist any further action by the technical committee on these issues if we need to. And Mr. Steele.
Is Mr. Flynn the railroad person? Has he been? Certainly on this body, but,
Not on the technical advisory committee, there's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
technical railroad person on.
and is there anybody from the airport?
No, there is one on the Citizens Air Quality Advisory Committee. There is there has been, there still might be, there isn't,
Yeah.
but there has been in the past, airport representatives. But right now, there's no
Do
airport
they have
representative.
any desire to be a part of the process?
I'm sure somebody out there would be desirous of being on another committee.
Well, there's a whole lot. I mean, there's social services, environmental justice, there's quite a diverse type of group that could be on this type of a committee.
Thanks.
You might also consider Merrill Field.
That's true.
Right,
Okay, so do we have anything further on the items in front of us here, which would be bylaws, revisions, and/or the naming, operating agreement changes to the name? Further there,
I would just
information?
like, is there any, from the rest of the committee on direction or thoughts that could be given to the technical advisory committee on these issues?
Well, I don't think we've taken any board action here.
Oh, you don't
I'm
need
sure
to,
we
just
could all
a
have our
thought.
opinions, but they might be conflicting.
That's okay.
Well, I think,
There's an opinion.
well, it's not an opinion. It's just that certainly on this major change in the way that we would be dealing with these type of issues as they come before us, instead of going to P&Z, they go to some type of an advisory committee. I think that we as a board probably would want to see how you would envision that happening and all the details fleshed out. And so as far as giving you guidance, I think at least when I saw this yesterday and was looking at it, my first thought was, well, we probably ought to have the folks that deal with this the most take a real good hard look at it and see if it's even feasible, and if so, how would we make it work? And so from my point of view only, I'd like to see something come to us to really be able to get our teeth into and decide, is this what we want to do? Do we want to modify it or what? Right? Isn't that kind of in line with what you're saying yourself?
I don't think that disagrees with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mr. Steele?
Having attended a couple of the technical advisory committee meetings, and they're very valuable, I might add. I know there's some controversy in terms of nationally how those are structured and who goes into them and
Citizen advisory committees would say.
yeah, and so I know they've had a lot of discussion about the makeup and how they do it, but we do things a little differently here, is what I'm told. And because Anchorage is the only city in the, on this board in terms of representation and stuff, there's some guideline issues, but I'm not prepared to make a decision on it at this point.
I think I'll summarize and say, I think that, and I think I speak for the committee here in saying that I think it's an idea that has merit enough to consider, but the devil's in the details, and so when we actually get right down to the details, I'm not sure how that'll play, but again, I kind of restated earlier that, P&Z is a different body created for a different reason, and it kind of has been appended to this additional task, and so they do have a pretty busy schedule on their own, that they meet at certain times, they're not really beholden to us in any way, they're kind of there as a courtesy, and our work, we think, has independent utility, and we should not be subject to the whims of some other agency, so I support that part of it. I'll be interested to see, I guess, the makeup of this committee, and as Mr. Michaela said, who appoints, how long the terms are, I think is going to be an interesting conversation at the technical level, and I'm glad that I will not be there to hear that, because I suspect it could take a while.
I guess from a conceptual perspective, that it's good to know that at least you're open-minded. The committee is open-minded to the concept of looking further into the creating its own citizen air quality committee. I mean, not
Citizens
advisory committee.
But the other thing that came to my mind yesterday, and I just reminded myself of it when he was speaking, is that one of the things that I think you need to look at, I mean, we have a lot of commissions, advisory committees, and everything else in the municipality. I think we have like 57, if I remember correctly, 57 of them. So one of the things that, at least from my perspective, that I'd be interested in, when you define the scope, so would this committee act on their own, coming up with a recommendation, or would they be allowed to basically have citizen input by holding meetings and have citizens come and speak to them? So that's something that also needs to be put in there, I think, at least talked about as to, do you want to have that role or not? Because some of the committees have that role, some do not. So.
Good comments and questions.
And you're not necessarily getting the same expertise as people turn over, the appointments made elsewhere, and so the expertise you need may not always be present.
Yeah, my thought is that I would not want to see something that was 9 members of at-large. I think that we need to identify specific areas that we're shooting for, and maybe have a couple at-large
It's the expertise you
positions.
want.
But exactly, that we need the input from certain groups and types to really flesh out what our whole processes that we have.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am?
I just wanted to say the Planning and Zoning Commission will still have a role because the MTP is adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. It's possible, it might be a nice idea to include a representative from the Planning and Zoning Commission to be on this citizen advisory committee. The makeup of boards, of like the policy board, does vary across the United States because a lot of them, most of them are multi-jurisdictional. We are kind of unusual in that we have, our planning boundary is exactly the same as our jurisdiction. So that's why we have an exemption for some other things. But I just wanted to let you know that the Planning and Zoning Commission will still have a role.
Yes, they will.
Well,
Yes, sir.
my question is, are we going to add a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee as a permanent member of this committee?
No.
So they'll just be occasionally coming to us and making recommendations or reports or presentations?
The current structure is that all of our subcommittees report through the TAC. And I'm not sure that this would be any different. I don't, obviously I haven't read this packet, but I would suspect that we would probably want to put them as reporting to the TAC. The TAC then, as with other committees, weighs their committee's concerns, opinions, whatever, and filters it or massages it or passes it on with comments to us, and then we take action on it. So I would expect this committee to report to the TAC.
Okay.
And typically what happens is you'll get their comment from the committee, and then you'll see if the TAC will either agree, disagree, or make tweaks. But then when it comes to the policy, you get to see the original, you get to see how it was modified or not modified or accepted, and then you get the ultimate decision. So that it's not completely unfiltered, and you still get to see everything.
Process.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move right along to air quality trends.
Very good. Hi, folks. My name is Matt Stichik. I'm the environmental engineer with the Anchorage Air Quality Program, the Anchorage Health Department. Today, I just want to give you a quick update on our program operations and air quality trends within the city. Feel free to stop me at any point. I'll try to move through this fairly rapidly. We currently monitor for 3 criteria of pollutants: carbon monoxide, fine and coarse particulates. Air toxics and pollens are kind of extracurriculars that are not criteria, and we monitor those periodically as we have funding and resources. Air toxics we kind of do episodically, and pollen we've done for the last several summers, and we hope to continue as resources allow. Since 2013, we've maintained 4 monitoring sites in Anchorage and Eagle River. Turnagain being a standalone CO site, Tudor Road site is just a PM10 site, monitoring maximum exposure along the busy Tudor roadway. Garden is our flagship neighborhood site. It has all 3 criteria pollutants, plus it's been included in air toxics, ambient air toxics studies, just about all of them in recent years, and that's where we monitor pollen as well. Parkgate Eagle River has both coarse and fine particulate monitors, PM2.5, PM10. This is just a picture of rooftop monitors at the Garden neighborhood site. That's Trinity Christian Reformed Church in the Airport Heights neighborhood. Carbon monoxide has been a pollutant of decreasing concern for us. Just this May, EPA approved our limited maintenance plan for carbon monoxide, so that streamlines the conformity process, being based on a review of monitoring data rather than the fairly complicated modeling that we've done in the past. This graph is showing the annual second maximum concentration from among all monitoring sites in operation at that time, and you can see the trend of continuous improvement there. We haven't violated the carbon monoxide standard since 1996. And these days, we're averaging second max values at about half of the standard. PM 2.5 monitoring, we focus on neighborhood sites because of the importance of wood smoke contribution on high PM 2.5 days. So that includes the Garden neighborhood and the Parkgate site, which is bordering on residential area. If we look at the data, the purple bars down below are the annual average concentrations. Those compare with the dotted black line at 15 micrograms per cubic meter is the annual standard. So we're coming in at about half the standard for our annual values. Blue bars are the 98th percentile concentrations for each year. And those compare with the 98th percentile of the 24-hour average concentration. So those compare with the 35 microgram standard. And we're running at about half to 2/3 of the standard there. So things are looking good so long as home heating remains affordable in Anchorage and we don't have a significant increase in wood burning. PM10 is a pollutant of major concern for us. If we look at the data, there's no obvious trend, but we have had some high concentrations in recent years. And what this graph doesn't show is 2014, where we had 2 exceedances midwinter as a result of a thaw event that basically melted snow
all the bound up particulate matter melts onto the roadway, refreezes, instantly goes airborne. It's kind of like a freeze-dry effect. And so at this point, we have 3 exceedances on the books. That's the maximum allowed in any 3 consecutive year period. So 1 more exceedance before the end of 2015, and we'd be in violation with the federal standard for PM10. So we're kind of in a tight spot, having to work very closely with state and municipal street maintenance crews and respond rapidly to any potential exceedance conditions. And my understanding is they're ready to go for applying magnesium chloride to suppress dust as needed. But that's really hard to do on short order if they're geared up for snow plowing. I mentioned air toxics being an extracurricular. We just finished up a study in 2013 that was a repeat of a baseline because EPA instituted some new regulations that reduce the benzene content of gasoline from an initial 5% by volume to about a 4-fold reduction. Now 1.3 is the maximum allowed. So we did a study for EPA looking at the effects of ambient concentrations of benzene as a result of those MSAT2 regulations, which is a set for transportation related regulations. And if we look at the annual mean initially in 2008, 2009, and then again in 2013, we're at about half where we were. But what we weren't able to do is a repeat of the indoor study where we saw that indoor concentrations could be anywhere from 5 to 7 times higher in homes that had an attached garage. So my takeaway message here is it's still worthwhile to try to limit your storage of gasoline in the garage. It's not so much the car because that's a sealed vapor capture system, but it's the snow blower, the lawnmower, the chainsaws, and all the other stored gasoline in your garage that readily gets into the house if it's attached. So that's basically where we sit. I should mention that we have had some turmoil in the air monitoring network recently because two of our sites, we've had the landlords tell us they do not wish to renew their monitoring agreements or their site use agreements with us to do monitoring. Turnagain site sold, that was a church building, sold to a new owner that's going to run an adult daycare facility. He has concerns about liability associated with our access. Tudor Road site is going to be leveled and replaced with a restaurant. So we have to find a new maximum PM10 site. And I currently have a public notice primed, ready to go out. I don't know if it's due out tomorrow or not. I think that was DEC's intent, is to have it posted tomorrow, open for 30-day public comment, because that's required for making any modifications to the air monitoring network mid-year. It's not, it hasn't gone out for public review. Any questions?
In the board? We've got at least one. Mr. Steele?
What are the requirements for the site in terms of,
Yeah, well, the requirement is basically that we've identified a hotspot as a result of roadway dust emissions. So we need to find another site that has that objective, monitoring potential maximum exposure conditions along a busy roadway in town. And try to find a site that would have similar characteristics to the Tudor Road site.
what's the physical requirements in terms of power, access, things like that?
Yeah, well, we need
How much space, weight?
right. Most currently we just have a rooftop monitor, so we access it with a ladder truck. The space is fairly minimal, but right, the power is certainly something that we have to have that is going to require some planning to get in place before the snow flies here. So it's going to be challenging to get this up and running right away. We're looking at our next door neighbor to the current Tudor Road site. Jiffy Lube building there has indicated in the past that they'd be receptive to our use. If that doesn't work out, we may try there's the school along Tudor Road there at Arctic. I can't remember which.
Northern Lights. The one on Northern Lights?
No, this is on Tudor Road,
Willow?
west part.
Willow?
Willow Creek.
Willowcrest.
Yeah, Willowcrest, thank you. Yeah, so that's very close to Tudor. There's other buildings along Tudor Roadway that we're going to investigate as backups. Yeah, we got to move.
There's a
out.
school in the neighborhood at Turnigan too, Turnigan Elementary School, which is on Northern Lights, which is in a similar neighborhood, although it's Northern Lights Boulevard is more traffic. Anyway, I'll let you find the site.
Yeah, we've got some fast work to do. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. If we violate the PM10 standard again for the fourth time, what's the penalty?
Well, the immediate penalty is having to do a full-blown PM10 plan. So this limited maintenance plan that we're under right now would be rejected, and we would have to do a full workup of an emissions budget for the city, figuring out all the contributing sources and the grand total, and doing modeling to figure out how close we're getting to that emissions budget. So
we have two sources, don't we?
Our limited maintenance plan is okay, because that's carbon monoxide. This is PM.
Well,
this is PM10.
I'm sorry. We have a PM10 maintenance area, which right now is in Eagle River.
Right.
What
It'd be a brand
what
new
could
area.
potentially happen is Anchorage would be declared a non-attainment area for PM10, and then we'd have to come up with a new plan that includes Anchorage. And once you're declared a non-attainment area, you're under EPA's thumb for the next decade.
Oh, I know. Trying to get out of that CO thing for the last decade.
Right, right. I mean,
Torture.
exactly. We last violated in 1996, but we didn't get the PM10 or CO approved.
That LMP was our next 10-year plan. So we get out of that next 10 years, we're good.
So one of the issues that we encountered last year, one of the things that's helped us over the years is basically going in and sweeping as often and as early as we can, even when it's still freezing or close to freezing. We go ahead and use the chemical inside the sweeping devices. And also, we also mix it with some of our gravel as we're laying it down. What we had last year it was a little abnormal. If you remember, there was a period of time in the middle of the winter where it actually got quite warm here, but just the adverse was happening in the lower 48. They were freezing like crazy. So the chemical that we ordered was at real short supply. And there was a period of time in which we actually didn't have it on board waiting for it. And so we actually had to pay a premium to get it up here. Hopefully, we've got stockpiles enough. I mean, we're just going by our normal usage.
It has a shelf life, so we can't just pile up 3 years. worth of it.
Exactly. And so it's tricky, but last year, it was abnormal for us. And unfortunately, that's when we had the exceedances.
I understand there's a tanker car of it coming up this fall, and both state and Muni have spoken for that material.
All right, thanks. Okay, do we have any other informational items today? Not seeing any. We're at the always.
Yes, we do, excuse me.
We do
I'm
have
sorry,
an
I
informational
misspoke.
item.
Yes, we have Ann Schlapia with the Department of Health and Human Services on the air quality education campaign.
Air quality
Sorry.
education.
Just
Okay.
right down our line.
Well, I wanted to give you a very brief overview of the campaign. We call it we have a longer name, we call it the Air Quality Campaign. My name is Ann Schlapia with Environmental Services at the Health Department. And this is a CMAQ project. It comes, of course, from through DOT to Health and Human Services. The performance measures for this are 5 consumer exposures. That's sort of a surrogate for how well we're placing advertising. The individuals we interface with, because one can just put a lot of money into advertising, but will that have the behavior change desired? And so we'd like to do a lot of outreach. Another, to increase Bike to Work Day participation, which has been doing well. Distribution of timers for use with engine block heaters, and to provide or to assist in providing training for cyclists, particularly safety training. The Plug It 20 campaign began really with emissions and cold temperature testing in Alaska quite some time ago. There was once a program to install block heaters, subsidized block heater installations that ceased in 2006. And so what we have left is some advertising, and we also distribute timers. The second, the Bike to Work campaign. 10 years ago at the health department, the health promotion group was doing some promotion of bike riding for health reasons, and we had fewer than 200 people write in and say that they rode that year, but we've had great success with this. This campaign started seeing the commonalities in goals between riding for health, of course, and riding for air quality improvement. And so we began to get involved and support that, as did many other groups in town and nationally. So it's really taken off in quite a dramatic way. So as far as our public events and what we do with them, we, of course, during the winter, we distribute timers, but we also recruit for bike safety presentations. We distribute information about bike safety. The reading rendezvous at the Lusac Library was very well attended, I think over 800, and so we distributed hundreds of brochures having to do with safe riding for kids. And we also we have a presentation for agencies that provide services to seniors. We have presentations and outreach at the Alaska Regional Health Fair, Mountain View Fair, Bike to Work Festival. We worked also with the school district in planning Bike to School Day this year and updated their safety information. Anchorage had the largest participation in Bike to School of any city in the country. As far as the count of those that participated in Bike to Work, this count is done by trail counts, so it would be PM&E and dozens of volunteers out on the trails. We did very well this year in terms of participation because it was sunny, because we moved to the middle of the beginning of June rather than the middle of May, which is the national date. And then we had 16 businesses also out on the trail providing treats and so on for the event. And so it was
Bacon is prominently mentioned. when we talk about that.
Exactly. The timer distribution, we just had 880 timers come in the door this week. We got an excellent price on those, and so we anticipate having a distribution. This was at the University Center Mall Health Fair, and so we'll probably use this again also. We do quite a bit of training as far as kids are concerned. They're not really our primary audience, but as we're doing our outreach, teachers and so on are so, vehement about their needs that we can hardly turn them away. So on the left here, Airport Heights, we were there most recently. They had an after-school enrichment. We did the same for Chinook. They had a summer program. On the right, that was a municipal camp. And so that was very good. One of the drawbacks, or one of the real challenges with educating kids, is the condition of their bikes. And even those, many don't have bikes, and those who do, they're often in really poor shape. And so at the camp, we had a gentleman with 30 years experience volunteer from the bicycle shop Diamond, and he just went on for 3 hours repairing the bikes, and some he just told the parents to discard them. So there is
Good
a,
business.
there's some in the community are putting together a proposal to purchase bikes that would be trailered, that would be in good shape, and as people went to schools or after-school programs, the bikes would be ready to go. This was a training I did with Stellar. The students were riding up to Denali, and some of the parents asked for some help with some bike safety training. So we did rides, we did lot drills, and it was interesting. Between Tuesday and Thursday, one of the students got hit by a car. He was fine, but it's just kind of the idea is that it's certainly something we can use more of. We have presentations. I tell people, you hate those safety presentations. You don't know who to call. Why don't you call me? We have 20-minute, hour-long, it just, anything where people will listen, we're glad to do. I'm also an instructor with the League of American Bicyclists, and we're really pleased this year because we're able to graduate a class, give the prerequisite classes, have an instructor come in from out of state, and the group that was certified in September were from the gentleman, for instance, that organizes Bike to School for the district, people from Alaska Injury Prevention, Alaska Randonneurs, UAA, Bike Anchorage, and so on. So people in really good positions to go on to both teach and to plan curriculum. So we're more than happy with that. We also updated the bike map this year. PM&E shows us where the construction will be. CRW's graphics person helps update the map, and we print it. We also got a contribution from Visit Anchorage this year because they distribute those also. And this is stills from an ad that we'll be putting out once advertising time becomes available again, assuming it will after the election. And then everybody's favorite team, DOT. So, any questions?
Behind you.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
I was just making a comment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, any other informational reports? Sure. Okay. So now we get to the always dangerous part where we have open comments by the committee. Mr. Steele,
I don't have any comments. I've used up my quota.
Mr. Peterson.
I can't really think of anything additional right off the top of my head.
Mr. Michaelis?
Well, we still have an hour and a half left of the meeting, so.
You got a monologue you'd like to,
Yeah.
Yes,
Ms. Heil?
I do. Since we
Okay,
have
good.
the air quality topic today, I will say that I'm hoping that the municipality will really keep an eye on air quality with respect to if the natural gas prices increase or continue to increase in Anchorage. We do not want to have the problems that we're having in Fairbanks because of the higher energy costs, because people will go to wood and you will have an air quality issue. So, that's all. I just want to make sure you have it in the back of your mind, but just keep watching home heating costs. Okay. It does have a relationship to air quality.
Okay.
Just a comment to piggyback on what she says. I've actually seen a large number of people unloading firewood. I would say more than a typical year. And so I would expect that there will be additional people burning wood to keep their natural gas bills down this winter than in prior years. So we could have a higher particulate reading this year than we have had in past years.
Either that or like the woolly caterpillar, it's gonna be a really cold winter. Some of the old timers are just laying in extra wood, maybe that's it too.
Well, they used to ask the Indian chiefs in the old days whether they thought it was, gonna be a rough winter or not. And one year, the chief's response was, "We're very much snow this winter." And they said, "Well, why do you say that?" He says, "A white man cut much firewood."
Well,
Nice.
it does affect, air quality does affect your transportation, because you have to, if you're in an air quality non-attainment area, you have to have budgets. And what happens is it restricts your transportation is tied to those budgets, even though maybe the pollutant is coming from a non-transportation source. So it does behoove the policy committee to keep an eye, or as representatives, elected representatives, to make sure that you have a robust local air quality program. So your staff's doing a really good job, and you need to make sure that you keep that program going.
I just go to George, he takes care of it.
Okay, I think
Ban
we've
no
reached
wood.
about the end of the productive comments now. I'm going to call a cessation of hostilities before it gets any nastier here. Our next scheduled meeting is November 20th. Policy Committee and TAC meeting is on November 6th. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.